Samuel Adams Boston Lager, imported from Cincinnati.
A lot of people don't know this, but Samuel Adams began here in Cincinnati. I grew up in Cincinnati, and my father was a brewmaster here.
Jim Koch is the founder of Sam Adams.
I am obsessed with the taste of Samuel Adams because beer's not a job, beer is my life.
Yes, the same Jim Koch from those beer commercials. He grew up in Mount Lookout, and the world's most famous Boston beer is actually brewed today in Over the Rhine.
The recipe for Sam Adams actually came from my father's attic, which was here in Cincinnati.
Koch became a brewer in Boston after he graduated from Harvard Business School. But he first discovered the beer that would make him rich and famous when he came back home to tell his dad he wanted back in the family business.
And he took me up to the attic of our house here in Cincinnati and opened up this old trunk that had his brewmaster's materials and old family recipes, and he pulled out the recipe for the beer that became Samuel Adams.
That 150-year-old recipe belonged to this man, his great-great-grandfather, Louis Koch.
How close is that recipe to the beer we're holding right now?
It's exactly the same recipe with exactly the same ingredients and flavor and taste.
Roughly 1 out of every 3 bottles of Boston Lager is brewed here in Cincinnati. But the name Cincinnati appears on the label of each and every bottle of Samuel Adams. Get out your magnifying glasses because Cincinnati is the size of the letter B in Boston. It must be a proud moment to be standing here in Cincinnati, especially, isn't this the brewery where your dad worked? The very building where your dad worked?
Yeah, my father actually apprenticed here at this brewery many years ago.
Koch came home to buy the old Shaneling Brewery at Central and Liberty in 1997. Today there are 2 giant copper kettles in the Over the Rhine brewery named Louis after Koch's great-grandfather and his recipe, and Charles after his brewmaster father.
Knowing that your dad pulled up here to punch a time clock, that's the American dream, isn't it?
It really is the American dream, and I remember after we bought the brewery, I walked through it with my dad, and he was pointing things out and remembering this piece of equipment, that piece of equipment, and then it dawned on me, Jim, we own this, don't we? I said, yeah, Dad, I bought it. It felt like being the butler's son who buys the mansion.
The Boston Beer Company has invested tens of millions of dollars in the Over the Rhine brewery, which keeps on growing.
I remember the day when we grew 50%. You know, we hired employee number 3.
Now Jim Koch's company claims to be the largest American-owned brewer.
He pours his beer.
Commercials show the chairman sipping right from the fermentation tanks.
Then he gets it in his nose. He practically chews the beer.
Do you really do that? Okay. Do you really walk through the brewery and
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's my job. I mean, I still taste a sample of every single batch. Beer is in my blood. About 0.06, so I'm legal, but it's definitely in my blood.
And this city is in his blood and his beer. So what if it's called Boston Lager? We all know better, and we can toast this son of Cincinnati now that his cup has runneth over.
I enjoy every Sam Adams Boston Lager as if it were the first.
Cheers.
Cheers.